Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Now the second month coming to the game in the month of June is going to be Northstar. I have already spoke about Arcade quite a bit and he does seem very interesting given his damage holds up because he has quite a bit of defensive value by the looks of it and quite a bit of utility. Now Northstar does seem to be a bit different. Northstar seems to be more damage focused with less defensive value by the looks of it and also less utility. So first let's take a look at what we saw in the deep dive from his gameplay as well as his rotation, and then let's break down his abilities completely in case we miss anything covering the deep dive. So as we can see, he's a mutant character that will characteristically to the mutant class have access to a ton of prowess effects and quite large special damage and also some juicy red numbers. So we can definitely see that he is putting in a ton of damage. We can see that he has access to armor break, which is limited to the skill class, which is kind of a bit of a bummer. And then additionally to that, he has access to passive slow and a ton of passives on his own side. So let's break those down. So all attacks, light attacks have a 30 to 10% chance to grant a reverb charge, which effectively will let him do more damage per hit, and that is the source of those red numbers that we saw. Medium hits cause the cooldown of these reverb to briefly expire faster. We're going to get to that. But the important thing is that his armor break also effectively reduces the crit resistance of skill champions because you can only apply the armor break to the skill champions, which automatically will make him a better counter to Killmonger, as he's going to be able to largely bypass Killmonger's crit resistance as well as Korg's crit resistance. He does have a ton of hits, just like Quicksilver in his kit as well, so that is definitely going to be tremendously helpful. It is not a potent armor break. Its main purpose is just to have it there effectively to disable Killmonger's reverb and also to reduce the crit resistance that the skill champions have. Also, if this armor break does get purified, you just effectively end up ramping up faster, which will be something that happens against skill champions. So it's a nice dual purpose effect there, or triple purpose effect there realistically, because if you're going up against skill champions with mutant champions, kind of natural that you get to ramp up faster or get some benefit. And his main mechanic, kind of like Quicksilver's max velocity, is his speed burst. So you start the fight with speed burst and cooldown for 24 seconds. You can have it expire quicker with your medium attacks as well. When the cooldown expires, activating a special attack during after a dash or after punishing a heavy or special attack activates speed burst for 12 seconds, then it goes on cooldown. So you will effectively just need to dash in at opponent, connect the first part of medium and activate your special attack or punish a heavy or special of your opponents. Then while speed burst is active, your special attacks cost 25% less power, which is going to be a super relevant thing in many game modes because you will be able to passively stun the opponent, and then you're going to be able to just chain kind of like several level 1s, especially utilizing a relic as well, and that would be a very decent kind of finishing sequence. Now, speed burst is paused while Northstar is using dash, medium, attack, striker, or during either champion's special attacks. So that will mean that your 12 seconds will in reality last a lot longer, provided AI cooperates with you. As defender, speed burst activates immediately when the cooldown expires, but it's not the end of the world to begin with. Aside from the fact that once that is active, you will eventually go unstoppable once you dash in. So he will have a little bit of defensive utility as well. But here we go. Activating a special attack grants one indefinite momentum per level of special attack used. And when skill opponents evade, you gain another momentum, which is another way for you to ramp up faster against skills. Cooldown for speed burst is reduced by 2 seconds per momentum, and momentum will have additional effects as well as an attacker. When you have 2 momentum, you become passively unstoppable when performing a dash. So this is going to be his main defensive annoyance once the fight gets going a little bit. Once Northstar activates a couple of special attacks, he will be passively unstoppable on dashes. And then at 6 momentum, if the first or second hits of the special attack hit the opponent's block, you become passively unblockable. And then finally at 10 momentum, which is the max, the final hit of special attacks inflicts stun passive for 1.5 seconds. And that is when you can start chaining your level 1s like crazy effectively and, push opponent in the red. Now we haven't talked about prowesses at all, even though he seems to be gaining a lot of them. So on activation, you have 100% chance to gain 9% prowess buff per momentum for 10 seconds. Max stacks 40. All special attacks hits have 4% chance per momentum to grant an additional prowess, and all special attack hits gain critical rating during speed burst. And that means that you want to spam specials in order to ramp up your prowesses in order to do more damage, additionally building up reverb, additionally building up your momentums. And he's kind of a character that starts out a bit slower and then ramps up. It also means that at his absolute most, you will need a relatively long fight, which is going to be interesting to see how well he does in shorter fights, because he definitely will have the damage numbers in longer fights. Shorter ones, again, that remains to be seen. And again, on activation, special attack 1, you inflict slow passive for 10 to 30 seconds based on your momentum effectively. And that is a passive slow, which is incredibly powerful. I actually really hoped we would get some more characters with easy and constant access to slow. And then you also get to pause your personal prowess effects with this level 1, thus continuing to build up as well. And here we go, the reverb explained effectively. It's just a source of additional physical damage, effectively like a trauma debuff. And we have special attack 2, where each hit converts 1 reverb charge into an 8% reverb passive for 14 seconds, which is when it starts dealing the additional damage. If the hit was critical, you gain more reverb, and independently, if speed burst is active, you convert reverb charge has 20% chance to grant additional one. So if you're activating special attacks whilst you have your speed burst active, you gain basically extra abilities. And special 3, you gain 8 reverb charges, which kind of almost maxes you out. And for the rest of the fight, Northstar chance to trigger prowess, reverb, and recharge is increased by 110%. Thus, all the effects will trigger much more consistently, quicker. His big ability does not seem like really needed, aside from kind of tankiness on defense, I suppose. Whenever Northstar would gain momentum, you gain physical resistance passive, which obviously makes him tankier as is. And also, while physical resistance effect is active, you gain a reinforced passive, which means your opponents can't crit against you. And you gain block penetration, which will increase the block damage that opponents take. So I don't think he's going to be like a massive problem in defense to begin with. And this SIG ability is largely defensive. Because as an attacker, yes, it will make you tankier, obviously, when you do make mistakes and disable enemy crits, which can save you at times. But I don't think it's going to be vital to play with him. And defender, yeah, I don't think he's going to have that much defensive value after a month or two once we actually get used to the champion and when he goes unstoppable and his special attacks. So just to check that sound isn't playing, here is effectively his rotation in shorter fights. And it's very, very simple, which is another thing that I do like about character. In shorter fights, you just want spam level 1. That's all you want to do. Shorter fights, spam level 1, start gaining your prowesses, start building your momentum, and gain even more prowess, and start pausing them, and apply the downward break, and start dealing the burst of damage, and that is literally it. So he seems very, very straightforward to play for like Battlegrounds level matchups, let's say. Again, a lot of hits in a very short amount of time, which kind of can be a tilt in itself. And in longer fights, you will want to obviously go to level 3, let him trigger his effects more, build up your prowesses, pause them, get your level 2s, and there's like whole different shebang. But when we're talking about longer fights, we're literally talking about Necropolis length fights. As you can see here, after the level 3, all your effects trigger way more often. You kind of can play with a maxed out level of prowess, with still all of them being paused, with your maxed out momentum, putting up some crazy numbers when you're completely and fully ramped. That in itself, though, realistically in this game is not that valuable anymore. We have a ton of ramp up characters that can, ramp up in longer fights and do some ridiculous things. That is not where he is going to be gaining his value. If Northstar is going to be a popular champion, he has to be tremendously fast. I do think that a mutant, that's Quicksilver-esque with access to passive slow, which seemingly you should be able to maintain the entire fight, that could be his role in the game for most part. Counter vast majority of skilled champions and do it fast, if he can do it fast. So let's check out the full abilities and the breakdown here. You can see that Kabam didn't give him much in defender strength, which is what I mentioned, not too much in utility or ease of use, even though he did seem quite easy to use, to be honest, especially in shorter fights, just Formula level 1s. Quite a lot in damage, but this can also be incredibly inaccurate, because that did give Destroyer 4 in damage. And Destroyer's damage is not that great, too much anyway. So, basic abilities: Speed Burst, Momentum, Unstoppable, Prowess, and Reverb. Strength is longer duration fights, access to Prowess, access to Reverb, which I wouldn't necessarily count as strength in itself, and access to Slow, which is a massive strength. Additional thing, obviously, to mention is that he can amass high amount of hits on his combo meter incredibly fast, which, can be downside on occasion and can be an absolute, blessing fighting some voids or some other specific nodes. The weaknesses are that his abilities are triggered by special attacks, so anything that, disables that or limits use of special attacks will be messing with him. And critical hits. Whilst Northstar isn't overly focused on critical hits, he does have some potent abilities that trigger when he lands critical hits during his special attacks. So if you prevent him from critting, that can be quite rough. For instance, something like Warlock. And again, we broke down most of it, but I don't think we skipped anything overly important. The key thing is, that he does have a simple rotation for shorter fights, with effectively just spamming his level 1. Special 1 primarily provides Northstar with utility after his damage is ramped up via Reverb and Prowess. The stacking pauses maintain his damage output. Alternatively, it gives him access to passive slow for matchups where that's needed. That can lead to the bit of tension when you want to access both damage and slow, but the scaling slow duration with momentum will reduce that tension as the fight goes on. The wording on the final bullet point is a little odd independently, in case this just means that you don't have to trigger the 15% pause in order to get the pause when you crit. Okay, fair enough. And level 2 is Northstar's main damage source, which is kind of weird in a sense, because that's not the shorter fight rotation that we were showed, but we'll see. Converting reverb charges from his light attacks into proper reverb passives. A single reverb charge can be converted into multiple reverbs depending on whether or not the hit was crit and whether or not speed burst is active. In the vast majority of the fights, you'll want to trigger your speed burst with special 2, stack up a bunch of reverbs, and then switch to throwing as many special 1s as possible while speed burst is active to keep them paused for a long time. So that effectively will likely be his rotation, level 2 and spam level 1. So that's very straightforward, kind of like offensive photon, I guess. But again, it will all depend how fast can you get there. There's a crucial problem, though, that I don't think Kabam has mentioned or realized or addressed. You see, Quicksilver has the same problem. And Northstar will have his bajillion hit basic combo, which number 1 obviously needs some getting used to. Number 2 also slows down the rate you acquire your special attacks. That's kind of fine with Quicksilver, because special attacks aren't the main thing that he does. He builds up his whiplashes and then detonates them, and if you don't get your special attack super quick with Quicksilver, not end of the world, because at the same time you're building up plenty of whiplashes, and then special kind of in plenty of cases might not even be there, because a lot of his abilities work without special attacks. Yes, they are nice to have, and they're definitely great to finish the fights for Quicksilver, but it doesn't seem as big of a deal or as big of a problem. from what I have seen here, obviously, as a mutant character, and even in his weaknesses, it's listed that he relies on special attacks, trigger abilities. The problem is, we actually made a comparison. Those 13 hit combos take significantly longer time to finish, about 40% longer time. And that also means you gain offensive power slower. Right? Because if you need to wait, let's say, 6 or 7 seconds to land the combo opposed to 4 seconds or 3 seconds like it is with most champions, you will land the same amount of combos, obviously, but way more hits, and that takes longer time to get you level 2. Like, to put it very bluntly, when you're using Groot or Wolverine, a champion with a basic 5-hit combo, you can get to your special attack in shorter amount of time because your combos take up less animation and that takes up less time, and you build up the special attack quicker, let's say 10 seconds. If your combos are 50% longer, those 10 seconds turn into 15 seconds. And that means for a champion that's heavily dependent on special attacks, that is actually a big drawback. That is the same thing as reduced combat power rate to a regular champion, pretty much. And that kind of actually got me worried about Northstar. Because he's a champion that definitely will need to launch as many specials as you can and want. And yes, once you have your speed burst active, you do use 25% less power. But his entire kit is spamming specials. So it's going to be interesting to see whether, he's balanced properly. Both champions this month have the capability or makings of very good and potent and popular champions if, again, the damage kind of scales up. If they match up well in the best matchups. I'm more confident in Arcade, provided his damage is sufficient, than I am in Northstar. But you never know with these things. So obviously, do not jump to any final conclusions. We need to see more of these champions in gameplay before we kind of start hyping them up or, taking them down. But both of them definitely have plenty in their kits that could make them good. Let me know what you guys think, and I'm going to catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about